All right, ladies and gentlemen, we would like to inform you that we provide a QR code that you can find on your tables to access the materials from the speaker's presentation. Bapak Ibu sekalian, jika ingin mendapatkan materi presentasi dari pembicara, dapat scan QR code yang terdapat di meja Anda masing-masing. All right, we're going to move on to our next session, which is a discussion. We're going to have a 20 minutes discussion. We're going to divide it into two sections. The first section will be a question and answer from the moderator to the speakers, and then the second one will be questions from the floor. So please prepare your questions, and hopefully we can have questions for each of our panelists. So for the first questions, allow me to ask the question to Pak Chandra first, of course, as his first speaker. We learned from your presentation that now the government has already produced the strategy, RPJMN, and then the current government has also laid out the 8 goals, the Asta Cita. But what would we like to know more is about the MSME. So what strategy that is different from the current government compared to the previous government, so that we can really escalate the capacities of the SMSEs to improve and finally, make Indonesia out of the middle income countries trap?
Okay, thank you very much for the question. First, about the strategy. What is the difference between right now and before? I think that in the planning document, we have a little, very, very big changes about that in the planning document. For example, we now, if you look at about that in the planning document, there is no sector. There is no, what we call it, no sector, not target for infrastructure. Why? We try to reduce about the ego sectoral. So if you look at, for example, like to achieve the high economic growth, we have three kinds of transformation. First, about the social transformation that include the first about that how we handle about the health, education, and social protection. And the second one about that economic transformation, we will handle on the SMEs under economic transformation, productivity, green economy, how to make integrated between for each part of Indonesia, and the last one about that digital transformation. And the last one, the last transformation is how about that governance transformation, because we want to make sure that we try to create the good climate for investment. Okay, we have the 3 kind of transformation, and how the transformation works. We have the we call the foundation. First about the stability. The second one about that gender, family, and sustainability. So there is the big changes about in the planning document. We don't want, if you maybe you heard about that, we built a dam, but there is no irrigation in 2015 in Aceh. Maybe I don't want the policy like that. That's why we try to reduce about the ego sectoral. Related to the SMEs, if you look at about that, we have a high ambition about the target. We want to achieve advanced country in 2045. The main driver for the to achieve that is from industry sector. If you look at the portion of industry to GDP, right now is below 20%. This is very, very difficult if you want to achieve the industrial country. So SMEs will directly to the how to make the linkage between industry. So this is, if you look at the ecosystem, as I mentioned before, SMEs will be ecosystem to support the industrial sector. I think that's the strategy. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. So good news for the MSMEs actors. It already laid out specifically for them the strategy, and also for BRIs, probably it's going to be another guidance for them to improve their work with the MSME sector. Okay, now I'm going to move to Mr. Albert Park because you've laid out so many recommendations for the Asian countries in order to improve their MSMEs. So according to you, which one is the best or maybe the foremost strategy to be implemented in Indonesia, and especially if you relate that to the program that is already conducted by BRI?
Well, I think, many countries are successful in different dimensions, but in terms of supporting MSME development, I think building the infrastructure and the environment, business environment, logistical environment, really is probably the biggest paying way, the best way to do it, not necessarily through subsidies or other things which are more temporary and have more financial costs for governments. If you look at some of the large economies, India and China, I think they've done really well on digital public infrastructure. Digitalization is a dual-edged sword because on the one hand, if you're not connected, you can't participate. But it's very powerful because if you are connected, it can help people who are remote and small really leapfrog and become much more competitive. There's a lot of talk these days about digital public infrastructure. What should the government be trying to support as the basic frameworks to promote digital economy? That includes payment systems, digital banking, but it also includes things like identity systems. We have this famous biometric program in India that makes it easier for people to engage in transactions very securely. And here AI can also be powerful. Like in China, everyone pays for everything now with their cell phone. I think that's happening more and more in Indonesia as well. But then a lot of the payment platforms like Alipay and WeChat, because they have such good data on customers and also on the businesses that are trading on their e-commerce platforms, they're in a very good position to judge who's creditworthy. And they don't need a loan officer. They get AI to do that. And so suddenly, for like WeChat Pay, I visited their office, their banking offices some years ago, and they have like a war room, and they have a staff of like 20 people. And then the war room, there's this ticker of all the new loans that they're lending now online. And it's in the hundreds of millions of customers. And it's just like very few people, because they're all using AI algorithms to extend this credit automatically to the people who qualify. And that's nationwide, right? So that could be very powerful for inclusion, but it takes a while to, develop the infrastructure to get to that point. Maybe I'll stop there.
All right, thank you very much for explaining that to us. So, yeah, of course, we've heard this morning that BRIs also have a program called Brilliant that try to reach more people through the digitalizations of banking. So hopefully this is also going to improve the MSME's capacity in the future. All right, so how about the next speaker? I'm going to ask Ms. Harsha the questions. But first of all, allow me to maybe give a one comment about your presentation, because you said that, women tends to be getting lower access to financial service. So maybe around like less than 50%, right? So I just want to comment on this panel first, because we have a 50-50 women and men comparison. So this is hopefully going to be a description of how BRI is going to support more women in their banking activity. So please maybe give a round of applause to BRI. Okay, so now, my real question to you is, we know that Women's World Banking has already conducted a survey or a research together with BRI regarding the women's role in MSMEs in Indonesia. So can you tell us more about that research, and what is the most interesting facts or study that you can share with us? And if that is a challenge, how to overcome that challenge?
Sure. So yes, we have partnered with BRI for many years. It's been a fantastic partnership doing a number of different things, but most recently we've been working with them on the UMI program, and we started out with research, as we always do, to really understand from the customer perspective, from the client perspective, what the needs are. And as you can imagine, MSMEs are not a homogeneous group. There are sub-segments, different personas of MSMEs, depending on the kind of business that they have, depending on the location, depending on whether it's their primary business. So that's the first thing that we did, is to identify who the customers are and what their financial needs are and what their financial behaviors are. Because that informs then the proposition to develop for them, or how the proposition needs to be refined and tweaked. The second component of that work was then developing a solution that we piloted to actually assess whether it worked. I mean, we need proof of concept before we can say scale this up. And that solution entailed two parts. One was, how do we increase access to credit to MSMEs? And the second was, how do you build MSME resilience through savings? So two elements of that we worked on. And part of the solution components included training of agents, because the way to get to the customers is through agents. So what did we have to do with both men and women agents, training them, assessing their performance, understanding, which agents should be invested in. Again, not all agents are also the same. There was a lot of gender sensitization training done within the organization. We also looked at how to mobilize or increase mobilization of deposits during the meetings that the clients had, the center meetings, because these were the touch points where you can actually get them to save. And we developed a toolkit that the agents could use even after we left, in order to figure out where they need to adjust and improve, the pitch, the sale to the customers, or the information that the customers need. And finally, there was also training provided to customers. A lot of the times, it's that they do not have the information, not that they don't know what to do with the information. They don't have the right information, and it's not communicated in a manner that's clear and simple. And so those are the elements that we worked on. And happy to share, the results were quite amazing. When you look at women agents compared to male agents, we found an increase in productivity and performance. Female agents had a 1.7% higher loan portfolio performance compared to male agents. And when it came to loan disbursements, it was 2.4% higher than males. So that was really interesting, because it came out of the pilot that we looked at. We also saw that the savings solution was rolled out through PNM to 17 million women across the country. So just, a few statistics that goes to show that understanding the customer and the segments of the customer clearly and well inform the proposition. Then, testing it to make sure that it actually works, adjusting it to see where it's not working, tweaking it before then rolling it out. But rollout and, impact is certainly attainable.
All right, thank you very much, Ms. Harsha. Please give a round of applause to our speakers. Thank you for explaining those to us just now. Now I'm going to open the Q&A session. We would like to get questions from the floor. If you have questions, please raise your hand, and the committee will provide you with the microphone so that you can ask directly the questions to our speaker. Is there any questions from the floor? Okay, there's one over there. I hope the committee can see. Can you please stand up? Please provide us with your name and your institutions, and please be brief for your questions. Yeah, that one.
Thank you for the presentation. I just want to ask on the women's world bankings. After the presentations, I acknowledged the crucial role that world women's banking hold for empowering women financially. But in many cultures, deeply rooted gender bias still limit women's access to work, financial independence, and even decision-making power over their own incomes. How does Women World Banking address this cultural and structural challenges, and what strategy have been most effective in shifting traditional mindset to support women's economic empowerment and walking to a more inclusive growth? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. May I ask your name and your institution, please?
My name is Olivia. I'm from a university, let's just put it that way.
All right. Okay, thank you very much, Olivia. Now, one more questions. If we have a question from the floor, please raise your hand. Okay. Okay, maybe we can answer the questions first. Ms. Harsa, please answer the question.
Sure. Yeah, thank you for that question. It's one that we get often, and it's a difficult one to, fully solve for, to be very honest. But I will say this, understanding the cultural context, the societal barriers is very much part of the research that we do to understand what can work and cannot work. It's very difficult to go in and say, this tradition is not the right tradition. It's not for us to, opine on that. But how do we work around that? So for example, we worked in Pakistan some years ago, and we worked with a telco that was also providing financial services, and they were trying to sell their products, and they were just not getting any uptake. And when we, sort of scratched behind the surface to see what was going on, we found that it was male agents that were going out and selling the product to both men and women. So that's great. The uptake from men worked fine, but the uptake from women was zero. Why? Because in that cultural context, it is not appropriate for women to be providing their phone number to a male. And so, it's inappropriate for a woman to be speaking with a male, agent. And so we realized then, for that proposition to work, we needed to recruit female agents, because then there was trust, then there was the ability to interact, there was the ability to share information. So it's just about understanding the various cultural contexts and, how the cultures and societies work. Even within one country, it could be quite different. And solving and, working around that.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, so now we still have a little moment for this question and answer session, but since we have arrived at the end of this session, we would like to ask each of the panelists to provide their closing statements, especially relating to this question. Can Indonesia move out from the middle income country trap, just like our topic, Maybe I will ask Pak Chandra first.
If you ask me about the escape from middle income trap, I said we have to.
Oh, so it's not a question
Yes,
of can, but have to.
We have to, because this is very difficult to achieve the advanced country if we cannot escape from the middle income trap. That's why in our the planning document, we have an ambitious target. How to achieve ambitious target? We need the economic growth with the sustainability. So in the planning document, we target about 6 until 7%. But in the medium term, Pak Prabowo wants make it higher, not only 6 until 7, but 8%. I think this is like that. What we call it? This is okay. We have a high target, but our government need more about the growth. That's why a lot of policy that we will set in the medium term. For example, like that Bu Sri Mulyani said before, within the limited resources of APBN, we try to achieve that. How? We try to boost about the private sector, because we have investment need around 43,000 trillion for 5 years. And government can contribute only 7 until 8%. The rest of it is coming from the private sector. That's why I think this is a right moment for us, that because SMEs is the very, very important for our economy.
All
I
right.
think this, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Pak Chandra. Now I'm going to Mr. Alberpakia. So the same questions. How can we boost, MSME's capacity so that it finally help Indonesia move out of the middle income countries trap?
Right. I agree that Indonesia will definitely reach middle income status. Of course, how long it takes is a question, but I think a lot of the basic conditions are there. But in terms of continue to maintain higher growth rates, one thing that's very important, especially in today's environment, is to still be very open to globalization, to open trade and investment. If you look at past periods of history, you see poorer countries catch up the fastest with richer countries in periods when the global economy, when there's increase in globalization, and also it tends to help the countries that are part of that globalization. So if you're left out, it's a challenge. And for MSMEs, I think technology makes it more possible for MSMEs to learn to manage better, to reach customers, be part of globalization as well. Although there's still a lot of challenges to that in terms of regulation, how paperwork is done for trade transactions. If everything could be digitalized and standards could be harmonized across countries, we could find a day when the small enterprise would find it very easy to just start selling things, items in other countries. There already is some of that opportunity through e-commerce, obviously, but so I think that would be my recommendation. Just keep focusing on building the building blocks of productivity. And I think part of that is also human capital, so I think the investment in nutrition of children and better learning outcomes. Indonesia still has a lot of room to improve in the learning outcomes of kids in the country. Those will all really set the stage for more prolonged periods of growth, not just to reach middle income status, but eventually high income status.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Alberpak. Now, Ms. Harsha Rodriguez, what is your statements?
Yeah, I mean, no question. I think MSMEs are going to play a critical role in Indonesia's growth. MSMEs are the backbone of the country in most economies. And I think here, the question is, as I mentioned in my presentation, a few things that need to be, addressed. Informality to formality, I think, is essential. That will help with data, along with leveraging existing data that exists in order to assess risk. I think the reason financial service providers are not easily, servicing this segment is because there's little data to determine risk. I think digital and financial capability is extremely important for the MSMEs. A lot is going digital, but for them to really understand, and not just, what the product is, but the trust in the system. Once that trust exists, it just, keeps going. And I'll say in the same breath that, consumer protection is important, because once the trust is eroded, then you go back to starting from scratch. And so really, keeping that in balance. Digital is great, leveraging digital is great, but ensuring that, the consumer is protected in the process is absolutely essential. I think what's unique in Indonesia is that there are a number of government bodies that are all working towards the same goal. There are at least 6 ministries here that are looking at financial inclusion. That's quite unlike other markets where you typically see, 1 or 2 ministries that are totally focused. And I think that's a plus, because, more efforts, coordinated efforts coming together can only have, greater impact. And so, looking forward to partnering with our organizations here to make this happen.
All right, thank you very much. Once again, give a round of applause to our speakers, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, Now we're going to conclude our first session. From this discussion, we can highlight that Indonesia has pledged to achieve its Indonesia Goal 2045 vision. Through the presentation by Pak Chandra, we can see that the new government has laid the Astacita, or the 8 goals, to be the principles of economic growth in order to move out of the middle-income countries trap. And one of the ways to do that is by implementing inclusive economic growth, by empowering the MSMEs in all provinces in Indonesia. So that means microfinancing is one of the keys in order to be implemented to boost the economic growth in Indonesia. And this is where BRI especially can support this sector. So finally, I am Valerina Daniel, would like to conclude this session by pantun, by an Indonesian traditional proverb, if I may, just very quick. Don't forget to say the cakep. Okay. Jalan-jalan ke pasar baru. Jangan lupa membeli sepatu. Barang siapa ingin Indonesia maju, peningkatan UMKM-nya harus nomor 1. And finally, selamat siang. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.